A very good day, or very good morning to all of you, wherever you are. Today it's my privilege to introduce Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala to the Advanced Air Mobility series. This is a monthly webinar that started last year in 2024 and will continue for several several more months. So Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala is currently at IIT Madras with the Department of Electrical Engineering. He joined IIT Madras in 1981. He has he has been working in this area of wireless communications, networks, and solar vehicles, transportation in general. So his work is his peak of his career in 2002. He was conferred Padma Shri Award by Indian government for his contributions to wireless communications. So he has been leading the efforts of electric vehicles since 2016. And before that, since 2010, he has been working in the area of power issues, especially in India. So obviously, we know power and communications are the key elements, or key resources rather for any country, for all humanity. So I welcome Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala to give us this insightful presentation on the topic of transportation in the next century in India. Thank you, Professor Jhunjhunwala.
Thank you very much. What I will do is that I will share my slides and then start the presentation. I want to make certain that you are able to see my slides.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'm going to thank the VTS IEEE for inviting me to give this seminar. And in this seminar, I decided to talk about a totally new transport system, which we believe we require in India. It's a high throughput transport for India's next century. I want to acknowledge the IEEE Vehicular Technology Society for their sponsorship of this webinar series on advanced air mobility. And as was pointed out, I'm Ashok Jhunjhunwala, Institute Professor at IIT Madras in India, and my email ID is ashok@tenet.res.in. What I'm going to talk about is relevant to a country like India, but probably also to many other countries of whether it is in Asia, Africa, Latin America, or also maybe in some of the countries like Europe and United States and things like that. I want to start with a problem definition. If I look at the urban transportation in India, today, to come from home to office, the distances may not be very large, 12 to 15 kilometers, but it takes more than an hour to travel. And while I'm giving the data on Chennai, same is there in Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, and many other cities. What does it mean? That a person is spending 2 to 2.5 hours every day to travel to office and back. Now, my remarks are in India. What I'm making a statement that this cannot be the future of India. I remember that almost 65% of our population still live in the rural areas. And there is a strong migration going on from rural to urban. As the migration goes on, in fact, the big cities are the place where the maximum number of people come in. There will be more congestion, and this an hour, 15 minutes may even become more. So we really need alternative. Any amount of tinkering is not going to help. All kinds of attempts are being made to clear the road, make the road one way. All these things are being done. So it does reduce sometime the travel time by about 10, 12 minutes. And within 6 months to 1 year, it catches back to that level. What we really need is a conceptually different transportation system for India's next 100 years. And this requires tangential thinking, not just keep on making minor changes. And this is what I thought that I'm going to present. Since we are talking about a solution for next 100 years, there are some must-haves. For example, one would like to see that to travel 15 kilometers, which is not very large, transport, we should be able to do it in 20 minutes from anywhere to anywhere in the city. Even in the peak time, we are not talking about in non-peak times. The second, today we use mostly fossil fuel. It's highly polluting. It contributes to GHG emission. What we need is the transportation system which is fully green. Uses only green electricity generated from solar, wind, or other renewable energy sources. That's what it has to be. Today's vehicles are extremely energy inefficient. The IC engine vehicles that we use are between 23, 24 to 30, 32% energy efficiency. The rest of the energy is just wasted. What we need is a system which is highly energy efficient. Remember that GHG emission is hitting us, and unless we do this, we are going to have a serious problem. The next important thing is that it must be buildable in the existing cities. We can't just imagine new cities. These are the big cities and they will remain. And the other cities are going to become like this. So it should be buildable in existing cities, and it must be able to handle peak traffic. That is the important thing, the peak traffic during the office hours. And particularly in Indian context, it must be affordable. And it must be reasonably comfortable. So I'm looking at a transport system in 20 minutes, which can get you in the existing city using green electricity, highly energy efficient, and get from anywhere to anywhere in a very affordable manner. Almost looks impossible. But then it is the impossible that has to be made possible. Let me therefore try to present to you a solution which I believe can actually do this. We are calling this hashtag city, high throughput, autonomous, human transportation for India's next century. This is the kind of system that we really need to build. What is behind this system? So for sustainability and comfort, we are actually introducing transport using pods. Pods are personalized, and in India, there will be air-conditioned vehicle. Maybe up to 2 passengers can sit in that. Should be comfortable, and this is the system which should be able to take us from anywhere to anywhere. It should move on rails. Why? Because rails have low rolling resistance. It is 1/10 of that of the road. So anything that moves on the road will consume, as far as the rolling resistance is concerned, 10 times energy. We want to minimize the frictional loss, and therefore they should move on rails. And that's going to be the challenge. The second, there are individual pods. Now, if the individual pods are moving at high speed, they will face fairly large aerodynamic drag. So we believe that these pods, which will be moving in the same direction, platoon with each other. They kind of join so that the aerodynamic resistance is faced mostly by the front platoon, the pod in the front, and much less in the pods which are in the platoon. And therefore, it minimizes the aerodynamic drag and therefore less energy consumption. So together with low rolling resistance and less aerodynamic drag, you actually consume very little per pod energy. And of course, we are saying it has to be green electricity, complete green electricity to power pods through rails, and it has to be powered through rails. That's the kind of system we are envisaging. Now, how do we really build this up? What kind of system we are talking about? We are talking about a dense pods transport system. We are talking about elevated corridors for transporting a single pod. Now, this pod's width is not very, it's about a meter or even less than a meter. So it's a very narrow pod. It's typically one person can sit, two people can sit back to back. And therefore, it's a very narrow pathway we need to create on an elevated, and I've shown here east, west, and north, south, kind of forming a mesh network. Now, the important thing is, since it's a very narrow, this can be built on a narrow street as well as wide street. Today, most vehicles try to travel on wide streets because that's where they can get speed. On a narrow street, they find it very, very difficult. But if it is an elevated, single pod, unidirectional system, rail, then the pods on the narrow street can travel as fast as on the wide street. So essentially, we are looking at very narrow and wide street, creating lots of paths for the pods to travel. And whether they travel on the narrow street or wide streets, they will have equal speed and capacity. That's the way they build. And we have said on one road, it will only travel in one direction. Another road, it will travel in another direction. Then east, west, and north, south lanes are at different heights. So what does it mean? There is no crossing at all. The congestions are all due to crossing. Here, they are at different heights. They can exit from a north-south line and enter a west-east line, or exit from a north-south line and enter a east-west line. So exit and entry is there, but they don't cross. They are at two different levels. Therefore, they can keep on traveling at the highest possible speed, and then they exit and enter the other side. We have come up with a very unique patented technique for pods to exit a link without any track switching. Normally, when any vehicle travel on a rail, and if you need to move out, exit, you need to do track switching. And if there is a track switching, there is a whole signaling system involved to ensure that track has fully switched, the carriage can move out, and then it has switched back. All that basically means signaling and waiting time for the pods which will follow. We have come up with a unique technique where it is just like a vehicle car. When you are driving a car, you can just take an exit. Similarly, a pod can take an exit without any track switching. This is a very unique thing that we are able to do. And since we are able to avoid crossings and track switching, we essentially can keep on traveling at the peak speed. The pods are in constant communication to a centralized controller. Now, these pods are autonomous. They don't have a driver, they're autonomous, and there is a centralized controller which essentially gives them the route. There is a unique AI algorithm which, as soon as a passenger is to get onto a pod, the pod's route from end to end is decided. And that is done by a centralized controller using an AI algorithm in such a manner that no pod will congest or no pod will get into a congestion. So, in fact, no link to ever have traffic greater than 50% of the capacity. And therefore, they can continue to travel at full speed. And remember that they have to exit and enter another. Exiting and entering will add a little bit of time, but otherwise they are just traveling at the full speed. Pod journey are autonomous once route is downloaded to it. Routes are downloaded. After that, pods are not controlled by a centralized controller. Pods exit a link to enter to turn. No more than 3 turnings on any route. So we have put that restriction because any exit and entry does add a small amount of time. But we have set maximum 3 turnings, and we'll come to that. Stations on east, west, and north, south link at every crossing. In fact, there are 2 stations at every virtual crossing. Remember, there is no crossing, but it appears like a crossing, and there are 2 stations, one on east-west side, another on north-south side, and on either of the stations, it can actually exit. So typically in a city like Chennai, with 20 kilometer by 20 kilometer, we put a 30 by 30 grid-like rail network on existing roads. Now, out here, while we are showing all of them to be straight roads, it doesn't matter if they are curved, they turn a bit and go, it does not really matter. But basically, they'll form a grid-like structure at second floor height. Unidirectional, no crossing. As I point out, equal speed and capacity on all roads. So narrow as well as wide roads. And 2 stations at each nodes. And the stations itself are on, there can be in a narrow road, and there are buildings next to it. And one of the apartment in a building can be taken at a second or a third floor of the existing building, which will serve as a station. So one will exit or enter a pod at a third floor of a buildings which are marked to have a station. So we are not talking about creating new infrastructure on existing buildings. You lease a flat, a building which has an elevator so that people can come to a second floor or third floor and enter a pod or exit from a pod. So this is what we are talking about. We are talking about a user, while leaving a home, enters destination on a mobile app. The app then figures out the complete route, communicating with the centralized controller, and app directs the user to walk to one of the 8 nearby stations. Because if you are there, there are 4 corners next to you, and there will be 8 stations. So one of the 8 stations, a pod will be available. And the user will be asked to walk to that about 300 to 400 meters, because basically the grid is 700 meter by 700 meter. This is the number that we have chosen for Chennai. And it is a 3 to 4 minutes walk. In fact, the map will show the route, walking route, and you reach there. As soon as you reach there, a pod is waiting for you. A pod, then you enter the pod, and it travels 15 kilometers in 12 minutes. 75 kilometer per hour average speed. It goes up to 100 kilometers per hour. And in 12 minutes, it's able to reach a destination, 15 kilometers. And then again, 3 to 4 minutes walk to your office. So since it is basically stations are within 300 to 400 meters of every location in the city, this is made possible. As I told you, pods are autonomous. Tens of paths are available for any pod journeys. We'll show you. And avoid more than 3 turnings. Pod travel at an average speed of 75 km per hour. And the key thing is to choose a path to avoid link congestion. For example, in this map, and this is not 30 by 30, this is about 12, 13 by 15. Suppose this is the starting station and this is the destination. Now, of course, there is one path. You can go like this, you can go like this, you can go like this, and you can go like this. There is 1 turning, 2 turning, and 3 turnings. But alternatively, you can go like this. You can go like the green color. You can go like the violet color. So there are a large number of routes. There are actually many more routes. At least 10 routes. And if you allow 1 or 2 extra links, these are all equidistance links. If you allow 1 or 2 extra links, probably there will be about 30 routes. Now remember that each turning adds to travel time. So we will, for each route, a weight will be assigned. And the weight will depend on the congestion of that link. Every link, each link will have a certain congestion. based on the congestion, the certain weight is assigned. And for every turning also certain weight is added. And basically the problem at the central controller, it minimizes the weights of a route. The route which minimizes and ensures that not a single link is ever congested. In fact, if the link capacity goes more than 50%, the weight of that link becomes very high. So that link has to be avoided till it is freed. So you actually calculate the path ahead of time and say you are starting at 6 p.m., but at 6.07 minutes, you are going to be on that link. There you see whether the link is congested. You look at the weight, choose the path in accordingly. You keep choosing the alternate path, and there is absolutely no problem to get the right path. So we are looking at a 30 by 30 kilometer grid, 30 by 30 grid in a 20 kilometer by 20 kilometer Chennai. And what we have done, the complete scaling, we are talking about in a peak hour, 360,000 pod journeys can take place in a peak hour. So we are talking about, even if you take 7-8 hours of peak equivalent of peak traffic, we are talking about 2.5 billion pod trips per day. You are talking about 2.5 million journey, and maybe two people can travel. So it can be anywhere from 3 to 4 million journey per day. Now, somebody pointed out that there may be some locality which is extremely congested and everybody wants to go there. Well, then the stations there will get congested and those areas will get congested. If you take a 4x4 grid, which is highly congested, you then subdivide it into 8x8. You create more paths. You don't put a the grid is not 700 meters by 700 meters, but 350 meters by 350 meters. The number of stations increases and path increases, and you essentially can, in that area, quadruple the traffic. The whole objective is never allow congestion to take place. So we are talking about 2+ hour, current 2+ hour of commute traffic. We are talking about 75 minutes being reduced to 20 minutes. All the simulations have been worked out. A toy prototype has been built. It's a toy prototype has been built for something like this. And we have done a complete economic analysis. We are now doing a little better than toy prototype, a scaled version of the actual system we are actually building. We have taken the total cost of all the infrastructure, the capital cost, depreciation, interest costs at 10%, operational cost. And what we have found that if the system is well utilized, the cost of travel through this pod will be less than a travel by a two-wheeler today. This is what is possible in spite of air conditioning and to ensure that you can get there in 20 minutes. This is the kind of system that we are in the process of building. We have conceptualized, simulated, and we have about 40 to 50 people now working on building this system. Now, these are very different kind of solutions, low cost, effective, can be built. And if you take care of each and every single thing, two of the primary things that I talked about, one is a penetrated system which allows exiting without track switching, and the second, which allows an AI algorithm to choose your pod route, we can actually get there. So this is the first part of my talk. The second part of my talk is yet another problem. Again, I'm taking a problem of India. And I'm calling it again hashtag. The concept is very similar, but this is for goods transport, future of commodity transportation. And for that, one has to again understand India. Now, this is a map of India. And if you see, all these lines are the highways. They're very large number of highways. The length and breadth is very large, about 3,000 kilometers by 3,000 kilometers. And there are very large number of highways. but only a few of them are big highways on which traffic can travel at fast speed. Most of the small highways are extremely congested and traffic moves at a snail's pace. As a result, what happens? If you want to go from, let's say, Chennai, which is somewhere here, to, let's say, Amritsar, which is somewhere here, it will take 5 days for a truck to travel. Now, there are, of course, rail transport. A smaller fraction today travels by goods are transported by rail. Most of it, 73-74%, is by trucks. The time taken in rail is as much, probably a little more than that in truck. And of course, when it is traveled by truck, it is highly polluting, high GHG emission, 5 days of travel. Now, this is the current situation. And India's GDP is continuously growing. It is growing at an average of 6.5 to 7% per year. So projected from rupees 300 trillion, which is about $3.5 trillion today, is likely to increase to 2 quadrillion, or about 25 trillion over the next quarter century. In 25 years, we are going to significantly increase our GDP. It has happened over the last 25 years. And again, likely to happen, even if it doesn't reach exactly that number, the trend is certainly is like that. Now, there has been a lot of studies done. This will increase the amount of goods transported from one end of the country to another by 8-fold. If you see the current transportation of goods end to end is taking 5 days. Something like this will make it extremely difficult to transport goods. So this is again not a future of India. And of course, if you continue to transport by trucks, what is energy consumption? Will it be energy efficient and fully sustainable? We are going on talking about long distance truck transport. With electric becomes very difficult. The batteries become very large and weight becomes very large. You are talking about hydrogen, extremely costly. And therefore, the question that I'm asking, how long will it take to travel from Chennai to Amritsar? What will be the cost? And this is not the answer. And therefore, we are looking at a totally, again, autonomous system, Hastic goods. Somewhat similar, but very different from Hastic City. This time, also goods container carried by autonomous carriage. It is an autonomous carriage, not a pod. On this autonomous carriage, your goods are going to be put, a container is going to be put. And this will bring you to within 100 kilometers of final destination. And the final destination, goods container will be moved to electric truck for transport to final destination. So we are talking about bringing the goods within 100 kilometers of a final destination and then use electric truck and simply move it from the container is moved from the carriage to a truck and then move the 100 kilometers. Similarly, while coming, it may come in the truck and then is moved from truck to the container. And we are talking about end-to-end transportation of 8 times the current goods transport in 24 hours from anywhere to anywhere in India. Now again, impossible goal. Is this possible? Then, as I pointed out last in the Hastic City, there are few musts for 21st century. First, must be sustainable. The only fuel that we can use is green electricity drive transport. So we are talking about Hastic goods being using green electricity, and of course, the trucks for the last 100 kilometers using green electricity. Then it has to maximize the energy efficiency. And very similar to what we had talked about Hastic City, which will basically mean that we have to move these carriages on rails rather than road, reducing the frictional resistance by a factor of 10. And again, when carriages are moving in the same direction, we'll platoon them. So platooning of carriages will minimize the air resistance, aerodynamic resistance, and that will minimize the energy required and improve the energy efficiency. Then we are talking about 24 hours travel time. And therefore, it has to be a zero congestion network, just like Hastic City. All carriages move at high speed continuously. So whatever rail network that we will create, there will be no crossing. Very similar conceptually. No waiting time because there is no crossing. And end-to-end transportation within 24 hours. And again, a centrally controlled autonomous carriage movement. Controller determines route for each carriage. It's autonomous movement. So carriage is not driven by only the route is downloaded to a carriage. Autonomous carriage movement on chosen route. Routing ensures that no part of the network touches its capacity. In fact, it remains far below the capacity. So that concept is very, very similar. So these Hastic goods are essentially traveling on existing highway. On existing highway using elevated structures. For a single carriage width is approximately 3 meters, that of a truck. And that kind of carriage is being transported, not exactly 3, it's a slightly less than 3, 2.5 meters or so. That's what it's going to. And this will move between 150 to, in fact, 225 kilometers per hour. Set up on elevated structure exists on existing highways. Again, unidirectional rail, structure width. So there are enough highways. So you choose wide highways, 4-lane, 6-lane, or 2-lane highway. It doesn't matter. You are going to create an elevated structure. And unidirectional. You don't try to do bidirectional. With a little bit larger than a carriage, no crossing, no congestion. Carriages again can only exit or enter. So they are at except at cross points, they are at 2 different heights. They are in the same height, but when the cross point comes, one of them will go down, another will go up, so that they don't physically touch each other. You can, of course, exit one and enter another. That's the way we plan to do it. And these are 100 kilometer by 100 kilometer grid. And there are enough highways. You can always choose highways where this kind of things can be put. Not necessarily straight that we are showing, but a little bit of curvature doesn't really matter. End-to-end goods delivery in 24 hours. So we are again talking about last 100 kilometers on a truck, electric truck on both sides. And we are talking about less than 24 hours. In fact, you should be able to do end-to-end in less than 24 hours. This is the place where average speed will be 200 kilometers per hour. It is 175 to 225. So the average speed is 200 kilometers per hour, and 3,000 kilometers. You essentially can travel in about 15, 16, 17 hours. And even if you have to take a slight bend and slight extra, it won't be very much. So this is the way we are talking about. Carriage on rail, autonomous carriage can carry 40 feet container load. Will move autonomously. And as I told you, its speed is between 175 to 225. And the weight of the carriage, including goods, is 50 tons. 40 tons of load is put onto a carriage. So the container is 40 tons. Our trucks exist with 40 tons when one will move from there to this. And peak power, we have calculated around 750 kilowatt peak. Maybe distributed motors, so that it can help during the failure also. Average power consumption of a carriage of 400 kilowatt. We need to really revalidate that. That's not certain. Powered through tracks. We put a battery backup in each of these. Battery backup is not primarily to transport, but for any reason, anything goes wrong, the battery backup will take you to the nearest 100 kilometer exit. That's the whole idea. So the network routes multiple equidistance routes between any two stations. We talked about, showed there. It's a very similar kind of situation. Ensures no congestion. All links, even on the narrow as well as wide highways, have equal speed and capacity. Rail grid implemented on existing highways. including curved ones. Bridges and highways may need some alternate solution. Elevated rails will avoid heavily congested road. So whenever you come elevated, heavily congested, you just move to another road, parallel road. Route, what are the innovations? First is the routing. Carriage's route determined by a central AI system at the start of journey. Routes chosen so as to avoid congestion. In the next 16 hours when it is traveling, it will neither congest nor get onto a congested network. So you have to actually map the complete journey of every carriage and see that it is followed. And if for any reason anything goes slightly faster or slightly late, you recompute such that and to every carriage you inform such that there is no congestion at all. Routes are communicated to carriage on 5G, 6G wireless. So if you are coming out here, you can exit like this, or you can go from west to the north, or exit to the station and then go to the north, or from the station continues on to the east. Similarly, if you are coming from south, you can go to the station and then go to the north, or directly go to east, or go to the station and then go to the east. So all this is possible. The station is at the ground level, and this is at approximately 10 meters height. The innovation number 2, carriage move on rails on narrow highways as fast as wide highways. So this single unidirectional rail on all highways, road traffic on highways not disturbed. This is something on which a lot of engineering had to be done. So essentially something like this was possible. Still a concept, paper designs are being done, but every piece is being worked on. If for any reason anything goes wrong near one part of the network, that part of the network is blocked and the traffic is rerouted. Because there are so many routes, everything can be rerouted. So any failure or any link, anything goes wrong, in case of any accident, failure, maintenance, all carriages must be rerouted. So all this is possible because of the centralized AI-based controller. Tracks are fixed, no track switching for carriage to exit and enter. It's the same thing. How does carriage go straight or exit? In a car, we just turn, and since there is a continuous road, it can move. On a rail lines, how does it happen? Carriage decide to actuate a lever to go straight or exit as per downloaded route. Near the cross point, there are 2 guideways which will take the carriage to go straight or enable it to turn and exit. So that's a kind of, I'm not getting into details of that. Patent is pending. Somebody is interested, we can get into the details. Capacity. Again, in a approximately 3,000 by 3,000 kilometer, we are talking about approximately 30 by 30 grid. 100 kilometer by 100 kilometer, there is a station. One station at each cross point, we are talking about 900 cross points. And assuming that a carriage can leave a station every half a minute. Of course, carriage can leave either in the east-west direction or the north-south direction. So there are 2 routes that it can take. And so there will be in 1 hour, 900 in the peak hour, 900 into 2 into 60 carriages per hour. And assuming that up to 15 peak hours are there, well, traffic will be distributed over 24 hours, but only a few hours will be peak. Equivalent to 15 peak hour, we are talking about 1.62 million containers per day. At 1,500 kilometer average travel, assuming 50% of the total distance is average travel, we are talking about 2.5 billion kilometers per day. Today's truck traffic uses 300 million kilometers. 300 million kilometers per day. So this is what we are talking about. We are talking about 8 times more traffic capability and still ensuring that everything goes in 24 hours. Has the good is possible leveraging technological innovation to handle all future goods across the nation in 24 hours. One may not build the whole network 100 by 100. One can start by building 300 by 300 because the total traffic today is not that high. But as the traffic continues to grow, you can keep on adding on existing highways and do that. Can be highly energy efficient. Remember, is only using green energy. Last hop is electric trucks. Cost being computed. And let me tell you, our first level cost cut is a 40-ton truck freight. In a truck, it costs about 100 rupees 100 per kilometer for 40-ton traffic. And for rail, it is 60 rupees per kilometer today. That's the tariff. This two things does not include the cost of infrastructure. Road is built by government using tax money, and the trucks don't have to pay for it. Similarly, rail network is built by taking tax money, and rail department doesn't have to pay. Whereas our target, including the cost of infrastructure, is depreciation at 10% interest will be 50 rupees per kilometer and still traveling within 24 hours. All that I can say, all these are doable. They are totally out of box thinking. They may not appear to be the most advanced kind of thing, but these are the kind of things that world will need. They have a lot of engineering, lot of innovations, lot of leveraging every possible technology that exists today. This is what I wanted to present. One for a congested city, another for a congested goods transport network for the country. It can save huge amount of money. It can become totally green. And by moving goods within 24 hours, efficiency will become very, very high. Thank you very much. I will stop here. Well, the last slide I should have shown that I wanted to thank the VTS, join IEEE VTS, and follow IEEE VTS on social media. With that, I will stop sharing and basically be ready for the question and answer.
Thank you, Professor Jhunjhunwala. In fact, it's a wonderful vision. I can say that only a person of your caliber can only present this kind of futuristic vision for a country like India, and of course, that works in other countries as well. I have my own questions, few questions I wanted to ask, but anyone who wants to bring up a question, they can actually unmute yourself and then ask, or you can put it on the chat. But in the meantime, I have series of questions that I will start with first. First of all, it's for sure what you are suggesting in my, as I understand, maybe smaller vehicles are better compared to, like, the system that we currently have, huge trains, big with so many what do you call bogies rather in train. Is it something that you agree? You're suggesting that the smaller containers are better than large containers and huge vehicles?
First of all, we are talking about autonomous containers. Many of them may platoon together, so they may become like rail. But the advantage is that they can quickly move on all kinds of routes, and they can go from anywhere to anywhere. And today, most of the transport is on a truck, which is a 40-ton. That's an independent truck. So we are actually putting the truck on rails. That's essentially what we are doing. The trucks are all exactly the same, carrying 40-ton. The total truck weight, including the load, is 50 tons. So we are talking about a carriage exactly equivalent to a truck, but moving on rail. And autonomous movement today is possible.
That's true. Yeah. In fact, that is true. Autonomy is the.
And platooning will ensure that aerodynamic resistance is not. So trying to make a rail, and instead of that, individual vehicles, it's like a compartment or like a bogie of a rail. Each of them are moving independently. They can, of course, join together and go in the same direction if that's what is required. That's perfectly all right. But that will happen opportunistic. If somebody needs to get down in the middle, today the whole train will stop. Now only that will stop and get out. So that's the advantage.
I agree. Wonderful. Do we need to come up with new infrastructure, like new grid lines? I think that's what I understand.
This requires a totally new lines. Will be built on existing highways. It will be elevated structure. That's the reason it's a huge cost. but we have also computed the cost and the tariff for the carriages, and we have worked it out that it's highly, it can recover the cost in no time. In about a couple of years' time, it can recover the whole cost.
Yes, I saw the estimate in
And it
your
will be
slides.
actually valid for very, very high traffic.
That's true.
My own feeling is if we increase the traffic by 8 to 10 times, this is the kind of peak traffic India will ever get. And beyond that, it will only flatten down. So we are actually designing for the peak traffic.
Yeah, my next question is, of course, this is a small, we don't have a whole lot of time, like it's only an hour. So that's why I didn't see the discussion or any elaboration on communication requirements. Have you looked into that yet?
We have done the detailed communication.
Mm-hmm.
Since the talk was supposed to be 40 minutes, I have not put any detail of any of the things.
Understood.
So
Understood.
that I'm more than willing to discuss with those who are interested. Help us build this. But this is something that is required, I'll say, not just for India, but for the world.
Yes, wonderful. Another question I have is, in fact, I'm doing some work on the air mobility. So in fact, some of the things that we are thinking of in advanced air mobility are, there is some similarity. My question is, since you try to do this on the ground or elevated levels for carriages, would you what are your thoughts on, can we do exactly the same thing in the airspace? And what would be
Airspace, the energy requirement will go up like anything.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
And the second thing is, then you have to put batteries.
Batteries, yes.
Or you have to use fossil fuel. We certainly don't want fossil fuel. I think something like this, the energy requirement goes many times. For basic goods movement, we don't need to do that. Highly congested area is not possible. Air mobility will always be then, I mean, for example, if people want to travel from one city to another, they will go by air. So that's all right. That's fine. But if you're traveling within the city, I think it is something. And 20 minutes, air, it will be very difficult to get there in 20 minutes. And getting within 300 meters of every office.
Yeah. So in fact, with the new developments in fact, in terms of autonomy and especially in artificial intelligence and machine learning, do you see more viability for this
vision? Yeah, the networking problem, I had started looking at it in the beginning. Look, the routing problem. For a very large amount of traffic, it looked impossible at the time. Now, with the kind of AI algorithms that we have, it is certainly doable. So it is what kind of constraints we put, what kind of optimization we do, all this is possible.
Yes, sir. My last question actually is, when you present this to government officials, or especially in India, what are the challenges that you see or what they see to make it like to implement this, going forward?
So today it looks like an impossible thing. And I think this, though a few government officers have come and seen it and just say, wow, but we don't even want to present it to the government. We want to be able to sort out every issue. We are currently building a 1:5, 1:5 scale, 1/5 the size scale. In fact, the persons who are building it, some of them are on the talk. They are actually building 1:5 scale system. We will hopefully build that in the next few months and then start testing out. Of course, not everything will be tested, but it will give us enough confidence. After that, we are going to try to raise money to build a full-size system. Not for a whole city, but a very small part of a city. And actually implement the whole thing. It is only when we are able to do that and are able to demonstrate effectively that it is possible, work out all costs in detail, that can we really start talking to the government. Otherwise, too early, and there will be enough people who will jump on it and not allow. I will sort of say this. I remember in 90s, when we could not take a telephone line to every home, we had started talking about wireless. I remember at that time when we started talking about it, it looked like a fantasy. And the government officers were sometimes amused, sometimes ridiculing. Same thing will happen and no serious help will come. I think let at least the 1/5 scale prototype be done. Once that is done, we start raising money. We will involve industry. There may be we'll invite many more people to find punch holes. What can go wrong? Can an accident happen? What will happen if an accident happens? All those issues still have to be worked out. So I think it will take us some time. We will then try to build a full-scale prototype and implement it in a smaller area. That is, and only after that, serious effort will be made to somewhere between our toy by 1/5 scale prototype and the full scale system. We'll start talking to the government seriously. Today, government officers are coming and seeing it. That's all right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Jhunjhunwala. It's a great presentation. You know, I work in the area of air mobility lately, but I can see the big vision and the what you have for the future of in India, and of course, so it takes in India, of course, it takes like 2-3 hours to go to an airport, and if this kind of solution is ready, is available, then I'm sure everyone will benefit. And it's not just in India. And anytime a new transportation system that has to be developed in any area, I think any region, this will be I think a great opportunity to look at it and then see, compare the cost, and whoever wants to build, they can take up. Thank you so much.
I've seen some experiments in autonomous vehicles for not on road in United States, in several cities, where they are also worried about congestion. I've been looking at all those system, BART system plus other systems, and I think what we have conceived of is more advanced than anything that.
I completely agree. And with that note, thank you everyone for attending this presentation. Professor Jhunjhunwala's email address is in the chat, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to him directly, or you can reach out to IEEE VTS, and have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you. Thank you.
If anyone wants a question, can they ask a question or they cannot?
They can ask the question, yes. They can ask the question. In fact, I waited. I was looking at the chat messages. Since I did not see, I just.
So they are supposed to ask questions.
All right, yeah. Yeah,
good evening. Hello, sir. I have one small doubt.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Right now, in all metropolitan cities, almost all major areas are going to cover with metro, and those metro railways are elevated at much height. So, can we utilize this thing to construct easy routeways and cost-effective routeways for our port system? Like in future, we definitely need to bring transition from metro to our port system. So can we even more optimize by utilizing already existing metro stations or routeways? Because like each metro railway route lies at like 20 feet height. So they save a lot of space from the ground level to that thing. So what are your views and opinions on this?
Metros provide public transportation. First of all, they're very expensive. Much more expensive than what we are talking about. They provide public transportation with fairly large number of traffic. It does not get you close enough. It does not reach every part of the city. It does not get you close enough. So what happens in spite of metro, I mean, people continue to drive cars. I mean, Delhi metro is a very well-made metro, and the city traffic has not gone down. Our idea is that even an upper middle class person would prefer to use something like this. Autonomous air-conditioned vehicle, they can go, and they can. Metros then have very frequent stops. Because they have very frequent stop, the time taken is just too large. 15 kilometers, if you travel by metro from home to office, pretty much anywhere, it will take same 45, 50 minutes, not less than that, even more sometime. So, and it may not go, it does not go everywhere. So that's a problem. So we have looked at it. Now, can tomorrow this can feed to metro? Those possibilities exist. I don't want to really look at it very deeply at this stage because we are talking about a totally new system. Very often, the new things are all put down by someone saying, oh, this will take care of it. Metro system has not taken care of it, care of the total traffic anywhere. Congestions have not come down, and we need to bring down the congestion. 15 kilometers by car, you should be able to travel in 25, 30 minutes quite easily. The reason you are taking 1 hour, 15 minutes is because high congestion.
Yeah, it seems like
Any other question?
Yeah, I don't see on the internet, but actually continuing on this previous question, I think, what this new model is more like a closer to personalized travel rather, of course, at the same time.
Personalized travel. It's a
So
very
that's a different.
personalized.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
And the pods don't stop or don't slow down end to end.
Yeah.
That's another very important thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think
All
that,
right.
thank you then very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and good night, sir.
Thank you.